Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Bacon from Webster PD in Texas. He has 32 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Bacon. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm glad we were finally able to connect. So thank you for having me.
Me too. I know we've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. I was hoping that you could maybe give us a little bit of background. 32 years is a long time to be in this profession. How'd you get started?
It is a long time, but it's scary because I've started looking at retirement options and it's gone by so quickly. So it goes by in the blink of an eye, but it's been enjoyable. So I got started when I was in college for a little while after high school, and I was kind of bumping around. I wasn't real focused, so I joined the United States Marine Corps, and it was about that time back up a little bit, when I was in college, I was taking some criminal justice classes, and it seemed like something that I would be interested in, and maybe getting into law enforcement. And then I became a Marine, and at the end of that time, I was looking for something to do. I was a little bit older. I wasn't really ready at that point to return to college, so I enrolled in a police academy. I just thought that it would be the right pathway for me. I enrolled in a police academy, and I worked during the day, and I went to the police academy at night. Um, and this was in 1993, and the hiring market, the hiring scene was a lot different then. It was a little bit harder to get on some places, and so I took my first job was with a small community out west of Houston on I-10. I was there for about a year and a half. After that, I left and came here to Harris County, where Houston's located, and became a county deputy. I was a deputy for about 4.5 years, and then I was looking for something a little bit better. The city of Webster had a fantastic reputation. It was a place I always had my eye on to come to work. So I was hired by Webster, and I started here on January 2nd, 1999, and been here ever since.
I love that. And you said that, and this was offline, you said to me that when you were in your career, you never had the desire to be a chief. Is that
That's
correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's not something that early on in my career I ever thought about. It wasn't an aspiration of mine, and people come into the job with different aspirations. There's people that's their ultimate goal is to be a chief. It was never my desire or my goal. I just wanted to be a good police officer and to enjoy what I was doing. But as you grow older and as you mature and as your filters in life change, you take advantage of opportunities when they're put in front of you. And I had promotional opportunities, and I took advantage of those. And eventually I found myself as the assistant chief. And it was kind of wild to me. Throughout my time here, I did, like a lot of police officers, I went back and completed my education and took courses and did things I needed to do to set myself up for success in the future, really taking advantage of things that my employer offers. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
So as I matured and got to a certain point in my career, I realized that, okay, if I have the opportunity to be chief here, I'm going to do it, but it's out of a sense of responsibility. It's out of a sense of responsibility to the agency and to the community that's been so good to me. So took advantage of that opportunity, and that's been just about 4.5 years now, and it's been a really positive time for me.
I think it's a really important reminder that you never know what's going to happen in your life or in your career. And the more proactive you are with training and learning and development, then the more prepared you are if and when those things happen, or if and when you need to fall back on that training. And, that could be obviously in the context of professional development, but I think it could also be in the context of wellness. If you didn't set yourself up proactively, then maybe you wouldn't have been prepared for those opportunities when they presented themselves to you.
It's a great point. In 32 years, I've seen a substantial amount of change clearly in the profession, but professional development has been a big key, a big change. The wellness piece has been huge. And obviously, we're here today to talk about that. The wellness was never discussed when I was a young officer, even in the academy.
Yeah.
Uh, and really just taking advantage of those opportunities, really the educational piece as well. A lot of employers now offer really great educational incentives, and are willing to send their employees to school to get that training and that education that they need. So yes, take advantage of the opportunities when they're put in front of you.
Yeah, 100%. So you came on as assistant chief, maybe didn't plan for it, but there you were. And then 2020, you were appointed chief. And we know what happened in 2020, COVID, all the other things that went along with that. What was that experience like, stepping into a new role as a chief in the middle of COVID?
It was stressful. Not only was it COVID, but it was the George Floyd. There was a lot of anti-police sentiment.
Hmm.
Um, the country was in a really bad spot. So when I took over, it was unexpected. Some things happened internally that we weren't prepared for. I certainly wasn't prepared for. I had been assistant chief for roughly 2 years, and I was hoping that I was going to have a longer term in that position so that I would learn more. Because I will tell you, there's so much more to being a chief of police than one realizes, and you really don't know it until you're in the seat. So I was thrust into that position. I was tense and anxious about it because once you become a chief, you're so far out on the branch that if it breaks, there's really no going back. And I truly love the city and the community that I work for. I
Mm.
wasn't ready to leave the agency or leave the city if for some reason something went wrong or something happened or I didn't perform well. I just wasn't ready mentally. So I was thrust into some challenges. Again, we had some internal organizational challenges that we had to overcome, and it was a difficult uh, transition for me. It wasn't what I expected, but I did learn a lot from it, and I'm better off for it now.
Do you feel like it was a lot of kind of, because the thing that I think about is no matter how prepared you are, can you prepare for something like that? It was so unprecedented. It was something that, you know, as a country, we had never experienced something like that before, and so do you think that you could have actually prepared for that, or do you think it was just trial by fire in a way?
Are you speaking about COVID specifically?
Yeah, just the stressors of the job walking in during that specific time in history.
I don't think there's anything that could prepare us for it, but prepare us for it because really the police were caught in the middle. We were caught in the middle between mandates made by unelected government officials and then really balancing the rights of private citizens in what are their rights. And we were being asked to, I believe, essentially trample on a lot of rights for something that we didn't quite understand. And it was a tough experience for all of us. And really, I think you saw different approaches to the pandemic in different sections or different parts of the country, different political atmospheres in different parts of the country on how they responded to things. And so I think all in all, we here in Texas and really more specifically in the Houston region, I think we got through it pretty well.
Yeah.
Learned a lot. We learned on the fly. We learned daily, right? Because when COVID first hit, it was if we even responded and were in proximity to somebody that we expected may have it, then we had to take those employees out of service.
Mm,
And before long, you're out of manpower. What do you do now? Who's working the streets? Who's working the communications center? And so
right.
you just have to learn and evolve. And there was certainly nothing I'd ever been through that would prepare me for that.
And I know that you talked a little bit about the staffing when you started looks so different than it does today. Do you think that that time period really impacted retention?
I think it impacted retention and recruiting, but really I think the pendulum is really starting to swing. I think that people are starting to look at this as a viable career field. And again, it depends on what market you're in, but a young person can come into this job, they can make a starting salary that's far and above what the top out salary was when I started.
Yeah.
They can make a good salary. They can have a really good pension. They can have a great work-life balance, depending on what type of schedule you work. So, and it's fun. It's still a fun job. So there's a lot of uh, pluses to entering this profession, and I personally think that the pendulum's starting to swing back, and people are looking at it as a viable career path.
Good. Yeah, I am too, honestly. And the more conversations I have with leadership across the country, I think everyone's starting to feel that a little bit more, that the dust is starting to settle and public perception is starting to come back to what it was before. And I think that it's through the great efforts that you have all been making to, have a solid reputation within the community, to do really good work and remind everyone that you guys are here to serve them. And I think that maybe it took a few years to get there with all the chaos, but I agree with you. It seems like the pendulum is swinging in the other direction.
It is. We really are the guardians of the Constitution at this level, and I think the trust for the police is greater than really even what's published. But if you look at some past surveys and studies and you see where people rank their beliefs in Congress or journalism and things of that nature, the police still score generally higher. And that trust can be broken with just one bad incident, but we
Right.
work hard daily to repair that to show people who we really are.
Yeah. I know that, you said that this was a stressful time for you when you entered into this existing role. And you had shared with me maybe some health challenges that you had as a result to that. Are you willing to share that with our listeners?
Certainly. It was extremely stressful because I wanted to do right by the agency. I wanted to do right by the community. I wasn't exactly clear on what my expectations were. And it was difficult. And I think when you step into a new leadership role, everyone wants to be liked, but that's not the reality, right? Because when you reach a certain level, ultimately the decisions that you make are going to disenfranchise someone or a group, and people aren't going to be happy with you. And as a leader, you simply just have to grow to be comfortable with that. There's no other option. Difficult decisions have to be made. So I was experiencing a lot of stress, and there were two different times where I was sitting right here at this desk, and I started to feel pressure and pain and discomfort um, in my chest and in my shoulders and back. And two different times, I went to the hospital thinking that I was having a heart attack. It
Mhm.
scared the hell out of me. Both of those times, I went through testing and I was cleared, and it was shown that that wasn't the case. I went through some additional testing that helped me kind of understand what I was dealing with. But really, it was me just finally coming to the realization that it was stress. And I just had the conversation with myself that I was not willing to let this job or this position kill me. It simply was not worth it. I had to take charge of myself. That's what it came down to. I had to be responsible for me and uh, get myself back on the right track and really incorporate wellness into my daily habits. And having done so, it's really changed things tremendously for me.
When you said that you really wanted everyone to like you, and then there's that realization that that is maybe not reality. I think I have had that realization in my life, and it's so humbling. And there is no one out there, and if someone tells me this, I think they're lying. There's no one out there that doesn't want people to like them. We all want that, but I think that the reality is that you can't please everybody. And so you just do the absolute best you can to be the best leader, the best person, set the best example, be authentic. And I too have had experiences in my life where I have tried so hard at this, maybe, I don't want to say losing battle, but this really uphill battle of, um, like you said, trying to be the best and trying to do all the right things. And it can be so overwhelming. And I had had health issues myself too, where I could not figure out what was going on. And as soon as you eliminate maybe not all the stress, but you start to kind of offload that stress. You start to see those symptoms go away. It's quite incredible how powerful stress is and the impact that it can have on your body. And I think sometimes we have to have those realizations, like those aha moments to be like, we are doing too much and we are not prioritizing ourselves in the way that maybe we need to. And sometimes it takes that almost like fear to set that new trajectory. And I know I've had that experience myself too. What were the things that you started to do? You said you needed to start implementing things into your daily routine to offload the stress, prioritize yourself. Was there anything specific that really helped you along the way?
Sure. And to your point, we know that stress drives inflammation, and we know that inflammation drives so many of our medical problems. So I had to work on ways to reduce the inflammation. I had to change things in my diet. I went through testing that identified certain things that weren't good for me to eat, that caused me problems. Really the acid reflux component, a lot of what I was experiencing was from that.
Yeah.
And if somebody that's ever experienced it, the symptoms really present the same as a heart attack.
Hmm.
So getting control of that, but really just committing to just getting back into the gym and setting aside a time during my day, no matter how busy I am, to go in there and whether it's lifting or rowing or whatever you're doing, just to blow off steam. And it's so much more than physical. It's really that mental release. Go into the gym for 45 minutes or whatever it is and just forget about everything else. And when you're in there, you're really just you're challenging yourself. It's just you versus yourself at that point, and it's just a great time to kind of recharge and step away from the pressures of the responsibilities of the office.
Yeah. I like that you said it's kind of a non-negotiable for you, that
Non-negotiable, absolutely.
you're carving out the time. Because here's the thing that we always hear is like, I don't have time. But if you set aside that time and it's a priority to you and it's a non-negotiable to you, you can find the time, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a 2 hour workout. It can be something that is short, but you're still making it a priority. One of the things that I did, and it's very similar, I had this realization that I said, okay, what do I pride myself on? I pride myself on being reliable, showing up on time. It is very rare that I will like cancel meetings because I like want to make sure that like I'm respectful of people's time and like I'm someone who's viewed as like not being flaky. I don't want to be that person that's like, oh yeah, like she's okay, but like she never shows up for stuff, right? And so if I have enough respect for other people to show up on time and to be there consistently, then I have to have that same respect for myself. And so what I did was I started scheduling meetings with myself, and they're like wellness meetings. And I approach them in the same way that I would do with anyone else around me. Like I'm going to be there on time if I can early because early is on time. And I'm gonna not cancel because of my mood or my motivation or how busy, I'm gonna make sure that I'm consistent with that. And that helped me a lot. It was like a frame shift for me of being like, I wouldn't just wake up and not show up for a meeting because I'm tired. I'm showing up for the meeting because I said I'd be there, right? And so I think we have to like treat ourselves in the same way that we would show up for other people.
Well, first of all, thank you. When you're speaking about timeliness, you're really speaking my language, and valuing people's time is one of the biggest lessons that I really try to teach my two boys. And I get frustrated when people don't value my time. The time of day that I've scheduled to work out is I get frustrated when there's a conflict, and there can be. It's usually from 11 to 12 is when I like to, but kind of here in our department, we have different work groups that are using the gym at different times. So we've fallen into a routine in the schedule, and we try to be respectful of those schedules. And inevitably, something's going to come up that's going to throw me off my schedule. But like you say, there's a commitment there, and you have to find a way to make up for it. And one thing I did is I enjoy rowing, so I purchased a rower for my home where I can go home and make up my time on the rower if nothing else, and certainly on weekends or when I'm away from the office as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think and the more you make it a priority consistently, the more it becomes habit and it becomes a routine and it no longer feels like another have to. It's like we get to do this and we're like looking forward to it. We're excited because it makes us feel better. But sometimes I think it just takes that initial, like getting things off the ground, getting in that habit. I wanted to ask you because I know that you come from a generation where wellness wasn't talked about and it really wasn't a priority for a period of your career. And you said that one of the things that really shifted your perspective was obviously your personal experience with stress and what that can do to you, but you were also attending conferences and educating yourself on wellness and understanding the importance. What did that experience look like? And was there maybe one thing that really stuck out to you where you're like, oh, wow, like this has to be a priority organizationally?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a great point. Yes, in the early 90s, when I came on, wellness was simply not a thing. It wasn't talked about. You came into the job and you experienced trauma, and you were just expected to deal with it. It's just the way it was. This is what you signed up for. Put your big boy pants on, box it away, and get back to work the next day, right? And we've really evolved as a profession. And I hadn't really the wellness piece came on my radar about the time that I made assistant chief, and then certainly when I became chief, because I will tell you here in Texas, we're doing a very good job at mandating the training. So now the wellness training is mandated not only in academies but as continuing education. But for specific chief training as well, the wellness is always a big piece of it, and the wellness is holistic. It's the physical, the mental, the emotional, the financial, the spiritual, the relational. So all of that's incorporated, and it really opens your eyes to what's important. And for me, um, when you look at the statistics on cardiac related deaths for police officers as compared to the rest of the society, it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's the average officer's first heart attacks at 46 years of age. We died 22 years younger on average than other professions, and that's frightening.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility as leadership to do a better job by our people, because the job is tough and demanding, and we're asking a lot out of our police officers. So we as leaders and elected leaders have to give them something back in return. We have to give them the tools and the ability to overcome these problems so that not only can they have a successful career, but they can enjoy life after their career, because this career shouldn't define who they are. It's a piece of their story, right? It's a chapter of their story, but it shouldn't be the only chapter of their story.
I really appreciate that you brought up heart health as a part of that. And, you and I talked a little bit offline about this, but I have been educated on cardiac events through a relationship that I developed, just through being in this space with an individual who he was a SWAT guy. He was 26, I think, maybe 26, 28, super fit. And he had a cardiac event at home and died for several minutes. He lives to tell the story now, and now he, runs a nonprofit, and he's really passionate about getting the education and then also getting AEDs out to law enforcement, because the first on the scene was law enforcement, but they didn't have the tools and resources to help him. Luckily, his wife was there, and she, I think, was a studying nurse. And so she knew some of the things to do in that moment. But through like learning from him and his organization, I understand that, and we talked about this, that I think the stats have always painted the picture that suicide is the number one cause of death in law enforcement, and it is still far too high, and we know that. But now there's new data coming out that that cardiac events, heart attack, cardiac arrest, is leading that over suicide, and of course we know that there's different reasons. You mentioned some of them earlier, but stress, nutrition, sedentary lifestyle, so sitting for long periods of time. The statistic that blew me out of my chair, because I sit and do the podcast, I sit, behind my desk and do emails and all the things all day. That increases your chance of a cardiac event by 145%. So if you're sitting in your squad vehicle or behind the desk all day, that's going to increase things. And so I think that the more education and the more that we understand, then the better decisions we can start making to prioritize wellness.
Well, that's a good point. Along with those things, though, there's also the state of constant hypervigilance.
Mm,
We are constantly in that state, and it even affects our families. And I think most every officer out there can relate to the story of going to a restaurant and you want to sit with your back to the door, right?
yeah,
I mean, with your back to
right.
the wall where you can see the door, where you can see what's going on, where you have situational awareness of what's going on around you. And that state of constant hypervigilance affects our families. It affects us, and it may be in small ways where you think that you're really turning it off when you're home or you're off duty. The realization is that you're not turning it off, and you have to work hard to get yourself out of that mindset so you can relieve that stress, which is ultimately driving that inflammation. And you talked about a really fit young officer having a cardiac event. That's one of the scary things is that we know that we can go and have our blood work done through our primary care physician. We can have the standard Framingham blood panel done. And it can come back and we'll look at our cholesterol numbers and all these other things. And it might be clean, it might be green. What those tests aren't showing are a specific inflammatory marker that has been identified as being unique to first responders, military, even our emergency communications personnel. There's a
Mhm.
specific stress marker that's the result of constant hypervigilance that is leading to our cardiac deaths.
Yeah. And I know we talked a little bit, you going and educating yourself through conferences and understanding the importance of this, you walking the walk and you and your command staff showing that wellness is important to you and taking those steps, getting in the gym, doing the things necessary. But you've also instituted some resources to help identify some of those markers and being more proactive in wellness. Can you maybe highlight some of the things that you're doing organizationally to try to get in front of those things?
Absolutely. So last year we brought in a company called Sigma Tactical Wellness, and we had on-site screening here. It was cardio metabolic screening. There was blood work that was done. There were scans of arterial scans and some other things. And so through that process, each employee was able to really gather some very valuable feedback on where he or she stands.
Yeah.
Part of that was you would sit down and have a chat with a nutritionist and with a clinician to talk about things that you're doing well, things that you need to improve on. And I think for a lot of our people, it's really eye-opening. It's confidential, so I just kind of get an aggregate report back. And yes, we have people that were pre-diabetic. They didn't know that. We have people that had specific markers, inflammation markers that were at risk for cardiac event. We wouldn't know it until it happened. And
Mm.
so it's just empowering people to take charge of their own health. And so as we approach this new budget year, we once again put into the budget to have the blood work done. There's different levels that you can do. So the on-site testing generally takes place about once every 4 years, but in the interim, you follow that up with annual blood test. And again, this blood test is looking for that specific inflammatory marker that I was talking about, along with the other things as well. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to empower people to say, here's where you are, here's what you need to do better, and hopefully they'll take it and run with it.
And I think that leads me to my next question. It's how do you get people to understand the importance of this and to take advantage of that, especially when you're young? Because I think that as we get older, and I don't know if you can relate to this, I won't speak for you, but as I get older, I recognize the importance of these things because I think I have maybe more maturity, more life experience. I've been through some stuff, I've seen some things, I've had health issues myself. I think mortality becomes more of a thought, in your head because you are reaching maybe the latter half of your life. And so things are maybe there's a different perspective on things. How what is maybe the messaging or how do you like you're providing all these resources, how do you get people to take advantage and prioritize that for themselves?
The messaging has to be constant. The messaging can't just be a memo or a policy. The messaging has to be a part of culture. And as a leader, you have to constantly work on culture. You don't come to work one day and say, that's it, my culture is perfect, we're done.
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. It requires constant work. So some of the ways that we message internally, we have internal dashboards that we use. Employees are issued phones. We can push out messaging over their phones. We can model the behaviors that we want to see, right?
Yeah.
We can set the example. We can provide them with the screening like I talked about, but I think you can also put them through stress inoculated training. And when we go through trainings and when you realize how difficult it is to respond to an active event and get yourself in the gear and everything you need to the fight, how difficult that is and how stressful it is, I think that also opens up people's eyes that, hey, I need to work a little harder and do a little bit better. So we on our gym in our gym, there's messages written on the mirror and they're just different things. And have you rode today, or can you win a fight? Can you save a life?
Mm.
Discipline, you know, and motivation. And so we're just messaging like that. And I think it speaks to a lot of people. And the reality is there are people that it's not going to reach. And there may have to ultimately be some trigger in their own lives that's going to get their attention.
Yeah.
We would like to be proactive and get out ahead of that, but the reality is that we're not always going to be successful.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about before. If you have things in place, if you have a healthy culture, if you have the resources in place, even if someone doesn't feel like they need it now, if and when they do need it, it's there.
Right.
And they know that it's there. There's not a question mark that it's there. I also like that you said that it's a constant effort and it's never just like check the box, culture
Yep.
is good. My brain went to relationships. I think that a lot of what culture is building those healthy relationships with people. And there is no relationship in the history of the world where you get together. You can even think of this like, maybe with your spouse or, someone who you had some sort of romantic relationship with. When have you ever just been like, all right, it's good, and then stop putting in effort and then it lasted? It's a forever evolving thing and you always have to put in the effort to make these things successful.
And that's the responsibility of leadership. Again, we can't just issue a memo or issue a policy and say this is what we're going to do. We have to put our money where our mouth is. So there's little things that we can do. We recognize that if you work night shift, it's difficult to find somewhere healthy to eat. So we contract with a company that brings in meals. We have a refrigerator in our break room that has healthy choices in there, and you can go in there and you can pay by Apple Cash or whatever, and you can have a healthy meal that's ready to go.
Yeah.
Like a lot of places, we encourage folks if staffing is good and your supervisor is good with it, go in there, go into the gym while you're on duty. We'll certainly pay you for that time. Go in there and catch a workout, whatever you need to do just to release some of that stress. But it's really, I think, a lot of it too in the future is going to come down to facility design as well um, as new buildings come online, they're going to be built more with health and wellness in mind
Yeah.
for officers, and not just officers, but really for our emergency communications personnel as well, because they experience a significant amount of stress and trauma that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough. And a lot of times they can't shed that trauma as easily as even an officer can when they're out in the field. It's easy to maybe walk away or talk to somebody and decompress a little bit. But the folks that are answering the phones and working the radios, they don't have that option. So facility design is important. We can build special rooms for them where they can go and de-stress during their time, and that's something we're going to be looking at as we start kind of the early exploration of a new building design process.
I really appreciate the approach of lead by example, be proactive, and make sure that you're inclusive
Yeah.
of everyone. And I think that you can think outside of the box a lot. I really liked the inspirational messaging. I think that that's something that's so easy to do and it can go a long way of motivating people. But I really appreciate the holistic approach that you're looking at. It's like, how can we make sure everyone feels supported? How can we think outside of the box? How can we do small things that matter? And then also big things that matter. There's things that are going to cost more money than others. Writing a, you know, you can do it on a mirror doesn't cost any money, it's effort. But, I think both can go a long way. So I really appreciate that approach.
So some of it has to be organic, and even on the emotional support side, we have employees here that are they're really invested in the peer support. I have one of my emergency communication specialists. She produces a monthly newsletter called "You Got a Minute," and it just talks about trauma and stress and suicide, and it's really, I think, that constant messaging, you can break the stigma. But again, our young workforce that's coming into the business, if this is what they're seeing from the day that they're in their academy throughout their whole career, that stigma won't necessarily be there like it was for those of us that came on a long time ago, where you simply didn't talk about it. And you were absolutely looked down upon if you showed weakness or vulnerability. Um, we as leaders have to evolve and realize that that's our fault. We have to do a better job at that. and make these folks realize that it's okay to feel vulnerable or to experience trauma or to ask for help. It's okay.
And I appreciate you coming on here and sharing that. And that was always my hope too with this platform is how can we have individuals like yourself who had to adapt, like that this is not something that is, I would imagine, easy for you to have that frame shift, but to come to the understanding that this is important and to have individuals like yourself who are strong and respected and who've been through it sharing the message that wellness is important. I think you're right. I think that that is going to break stigma. And over time, wellness will be so normal because the younger generation coming in will have always had those resources and it was always a priority. And then when they develop into leadership positions, they'll continue to prioritize those things and it'll be a snowball effect that happens. And it's all starting now.
Yeah, I think here again in Texas, we've done a really good job of promoting wellness, and I think it's really occurred probably in the last 10 years. For me, really, I think I've really seen it in the last probably 6 to 7 to 8 years. And the Texas Department of Public Safety has done a great job on putting a lot of science into different aspects and really promoting wellness. And they make those resources available to peace officers across the state.
Yeah.
The the information's there, the knowledge is there. It's up to us how we get it to our people. And you talked about leading by example. And I listen, I try to lead by example, but I'm a human being. I'm far from perfect. I make mistakes regularly, and there's certainly things that I need to do better. But every one of us is a work in progress, right? We're constantly evolving, and we're never probably going to be that final version of what we want to be. But I think if you commit to just getting a little bit better daily, then you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's an important reminder to also give yourself some grace.
Grace, yes.
We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. I think perfection is an illusion. We can
Yeah.
always strive to be the best versions of ourselves, but understanding that we might stumble along the way and that's okay. As long as we just keep going and we keep trying to improve ourselves every day. So I really like that.
Yep.
I have one final question for you, and it is in the
Sure.
context of wellness and the younger generation. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who is earlier in their career? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
It's invest in yourself in several ways. Invest in yourself financially, invest in yourself spiritually, mentally, and physically. But I will tell you that this younger generation already does a much better job of it than my generation. They are, and we see that, and we get upset with them sometimes because we feel like they're not loyal to the employer. They're willing to switch jobs or move around or do different things or take extra time off for the birth of a child. But that's what they should be doing, right? They're already doing a better job at it. So my words of wisdom are to stick with that. Make sure that you educate yourself. Make sure that you get yourself properly trained so that you can meet the really significant demands of this profession because it can be daunting at times and that culture has to be built early. One thing that we do here, we have an onboarding process where new hires will sit down with me and the assistant chief, and we issue them a book by Dr. Kevin Gilmartin called Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement. And we issue that to everybody, and we encourage them to read it. And there's real lessons in there, and we really encourage them not only to read it but to come back and discuss it with us. If you don't, many people don't take us up on that opportunity, but it's always there. If you want to discuss it, come talk to us. But again, that's just trying to build that culture early on.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time so much and sharing your experiences and your words of wisdom. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you for what you're doing.
Of course.